When someone ignores you, the first thing you feel is that sting deep inside your heart. It is not just about the absence of words, it is about what those missing words represent. It feels as if you've been pushed aside, as if the place you thought you held in their life was never really there at all. And that hurts, doesn't it? But here's the truth. When someone chooses to ignore you, they are actually showing you their priorities without ever having to speak them. That silence, as painful as it may be, is a window into their heart. It tells you what matters most to them, and sometimes you are not on that list the way you thought you were. Think about it. If someone values you, they find a way to show it. Maybe it's a small message, a simple phone call, or even a gesture that says, "I remember you, I care about you." But when those things stop, when your voice echoes unanswered, it becomes clear that their priorities have shifted. That's not always something you want to admit to yourself, but it is the reality you need to see. The hardest part of being ignored is not just the silence. It's the realization that someone you once gave your time, your energy, your heart to, has now placed you lower on their scale of importance. And yet, in that realization lies a gift, because it frees you from pretending that things are different from what they really are. You see, people can say many things with their mouths, but their actions, or their lack of them, will always tell the real story. Words can deceive, but silence rarely does. Silence is honesty in its purest form. When someone ignores you, what they are saying without words is, "I do not value this connection enough to nurture it." Now, I know that cuts deep, but instead of chasing after their attention, maybe you need to pause and recognize that you have just been given clarity. Clarity is painful, but it is also powerful. It is better to see the truth in someone's silence than to live deceived by their empty words. Sometimes, when you're ignored, you begin to question yourself. You wonder if you did something wrong, if you're not good enough, if you somehow deserve to be treated this way. But let me remind you of something important. You are not defined by someone else's neglect. Their inability to see your worth does not diminish your value. A diamond is still a diamond, whether it is admired or left in the dark. The problem is not the diamond, it's the blindness of the one who refuses to see it. And when you are ignored, it may hurt, but it is simply proof that the other person was never capable of appreciating the treasure that you are. Now here is where many of us get stuck. We mistake being ignored as a challenge to fight harder for someone's attention, as if our worth is something we need to prove. But the truth is, if someone's priorities do not include you, no amount of begging or chasing will change that. You cannot force your way into someone's heart. You cannot demand to be on their list of priorities. And why would you want to? Why should you have to convince anyone that you matter? The ones who truly care will never put you in a position where you have to fight for their attention. Their presence will prove their care. Their consistency will prove their love. There is something liberating about finally accepting that being ignored is not a reflection of your failure, but a revelation of their truth. It allows you to stop pouring your time into people who take you for granted and to start saving your energy for those who will value it. Think about how much time is wasted chasing after silence, waiting for someone who has already shown you they are not coming. What would happen if you took that same energy and invested it into people who genuinely want you in their lives? How much more peace would you feel if you no longer begged for attention, but instead chose to walk in the dignity of your worth? Yes, it hurts when someone ignores you. It feels like rejection. It feels like abandonment. But it is also one of the clearest signs life can give you. It tells you that their priorities are elsewhere, and that knowledge, while painful, can set you free. Because if you keep chasing someone who is determined to ignore you, you are ignoring yourself in the process. And the moment you begin to value yourself enough to stop running after those who don't see your worth, you'll find yourself surrounded by those who do. So when someone ignores you, remember this: it is not a punishment, it is a revelation. Their silence is not your enemy, it is your teacher. It is showing you where you stand in their life, and that understanding, as painful as it may be, is also the beginning of your freedom. Silence has a language of its own. It does not use words, yet it speaks with a sharpness that often cuts deeper than anything spoken aloud. When someone ignores you, their silence is not empty. It carries meaning. It tells a story, It sends a message, and it shapes the way you feel about yourself and about them. We often think that communication only happens when people talk, when they express, when they explain. But the truth is, silence itself is one of the strongest forms of communication, and when you are on the receiving end of it, you feel its weight. There are times when silence speaks of indifference. It tells you, I don't care enough to respond. And that hurts because it dismisses your existence in that moment. There are times when silence speaks of avoidance, when someone does not want to deal with confrontation, and instead of honesty, they hide behind the shield of ignoring you. That silence is not peaceful, it is cowardly. And then there are times when silence is meant to control, to manipulate, to make you chase after answers you'll never receive. No matter what the reason, silence is never neutral. It always carries a message, and it is up to you to recognize what it is trying to tell you. The danger is when we fail to see silence for what it really is. Many people ignore the obvious signs because they are desperate to hold on to the illusion that everything is fine. We pretend their silence means they're busy, that they didn't notice. That maybe tomorrow they'll change. But silence rarely lies. It is an unfiltered truth, and it communicates more about a person's heart than their words ever could. Words can be sugar-coated, silence cannot. And when you stop trying to excuse it and begin to understand it, you start to see things as they really are. Imagine reaching out to someone over and over, pouring out your heart, seeking their presence, longing for their response. And all you receive is silence. That silence is not nothing. It is them telling you, you are not worth the effort to reply. They may never say it, but they've already said it without speaking. That is why it hurts so deeply. It strips away the illusion of connection and leaves you with the cold truth that you mean less to them than they mean to you. That is not just silence, that is communication. But silence also works the other way. It teaches you. It teaches you what you should never have to beg for. It teaches you who really stands with you. It teaches you that love, friendship, and loyalty are never proven by empty promises, but by consistent presence. Sometimes silence is God's way of shaking you awake, telling you that this is not where your peace is found, that this is not where your worth is honored. And if you pay attention to the silence instead of fighting against it, you begin to understand the lessons it is trying to give. We live in a noisy world. Everybody talks, everybody promises, everybody claims to care. But when the noise fades and silence takes its place, that's when the truth shows up. You see who reaches out when there is nothing to gain. You see who stands beside you when the crowd disappears. And you see who leaves you waiting in the dark, ignored and forgotten. Their silence speaks louder than their words ever did. And it is in that silence that you discover the reality of who belongs in your life and who does not. The tragedy is when people ignore the language of silence and keep chasing after what is already lost. They waste years knocking on doors that have already been closed, trying to force love or friendship where it no longer exists. But silence is not meant to be ignored. It is meant to be understood. When someone chooses silence instead of respect, distance instead of presence, indifference instead of effort, they are communicating all you need to know. And the sooner you listen, the sooner you set yourself free. So, the next time someone ignores you, don't just hear the silence. Listen to it. Let it speak to you. Let it tell you what words cannot. Let it reveal the truth that perhaps you didn't want to see. Their silence may feel like a wound, but it is also a revelation. And once you understand the message behind it, you will no longer feel the need to chase after what was never meant to stay. Rejection never feels good. When someone ignores you, when they push you to the side, when they act as if your presence doesn't matter, the natural response is pain. You feel abandoned, unworthy, forgotten. But often what we call rejection is not the end of the story. It is a redirection. It is life, and sometimes even God Himself, turning you away from what was never meant for you so that you can find what is. The silence of being ignored can feel like the closing of a door, but perhaps that door was never supposed to open for you in the first place. Think about how many times in life we chase after people who have no desire to keep us, or cling to situations that are slowly draining the life out of us. We beg for attention, we plead for a response, we keep waiting for someone to change, hoping that one day they will suddenly see our value. And yet their silence continues, their absence continues, their rejection remains. What if that rejection is not something to fight against, but something to accept as a sign? What if their silence is not cruelty, but direction? What if the hurt you feel now is the very thing guiding you to something better than what you're holding on to? We are so quick to see rejection as loss, but very slow to see it as protection. How many times has your heart broken over someone who ignored you, only for you to realize years later that losing them was the best thing that ever happened to you? How many times has life closed a door in your face? And though you stood there weeping at first, eventually you discovered a new path you never would have found if you had been allowed to stay where you were. Being ignored is painful, but it is also a signal that this person, this place, this opportunity is not where you are meant to plant your roots. Rejection is often a redirection toward people who will value you. You see, when someone ignores you, they are telling you without words that you are not a priority to them. And though that realization cuts deep, it also saves you from wasting more time where love and loyalty do not live. Their silence clears the stage for those who will show up, for those who will answer, for those who will see your worth without needing to be convinced. Sometimes the only way to make room for the right people is to be pushed away by the wrong ones. Their rejection is simply preparing the space for something better. It's not just about people. It's about opportunities too. That job that turned you down, that door that closed, that chance you didn't get, at the time it felt like failure. It felt like being ignored by the very thing you wanted most. But looking back, can you see how every no led you to the right? Yes! Every rejection pointed you to a new direction. Every silence cleared away the noise so you could hear the path you were truly meant to take. Sometimes the things we lose are the very things that would have destroyed us if we had kept them. And what looks like rejection is simply life moving us away from harm and toward healing. The truth is, rejection tests us. It tests our patience, our faith, our strength. It forces us to let go of what we cannot control and to trust that something better is waiting. The hurt of being ignored is not wasted pain. It is a turning point. It is proof that where you are is not where you are supposed to stay. And though you may not understand it now, one day you will look back and see that every unanswered call, every closed door, every silent treatment was not the end of your story, it was the shaping of it. So when you feel ignored, don't see it only as rejection. See it as redirection. See it as a sign that something greater is ahead. Don't keep knocking on doors that are closed. Don't keep begging for love where there is only silence. Don't keep pouring yourself out where you are not valued. Lift your head, dry your tears, and understand that being ignored may hurt, but it is also guiding you to the place where your worth will be recognized, where your presence will be welcomed, and where your heart will finally find rest. When someone ignores you, the weight of that silence presses hard against your heart. It feels like rejection. It feels like abandonment. It feels like a deep wound that no one else can see. But in those very moments, something powerful is happening inside of you. That pain is testing you. It is stretching you. It is exposing the truth about where your strength really comes from. You may not realize it at first, but being ignored is not only about their choice, it is also about your response. And your response reveals just how much strength you carry within. Most of us go through life seeking validation. We look for it in the words of others, in their attention, in their recognition of our worth. When they speak well of us, we feel strong. When they notice us, we feel valuable. But what happens when all of that disappears? When their words are gone, when their attention is absent, when their recognition is withheld, what is left? That's when you face the truth about yourself. That's when you find out whether your strength was rooted in them or whether it was rooted in something deeper. Being ignored forces you to stand on your own. It forces you to stop leaning on the crutches of attention and appreciation. It strips away the external comforts and asks you a simple question. Do you believe you are enough even when no one else says it? That's not an easy question to answer, because most of us want to be reassured by others. But true strength is revealed when reassurance is gone and you still hold your head high. True strength is revealed when you're left in silence, but you refuse to let that silence define your worth. The truth is, being ignored hurts because it touches our deepest insecurity. The fear of not being good enough. It whispers to us, You are not worth their time. You are not worth their love. You are not worth their presence. And if we are not careful, we start believing that lie. But that is the very moment where inner strength must rise. Strength says, I am not defined by their silence. I am not less because they choose to ignore me. My value does not shrink because they fail to see it. Strength is not about avoiding pain. It is about standing tall in the middle of it. When you go through the storm of being ignored and still choose to honor yourself, you discover a resilience you never knew you had. You discover that your peace is not in their hands, but in your own heart. You realize that the approval you've been searching for outside has always been available inside. And when you learn to draw from that inner well, no silence can break you, no rejection can undo you, no absence can destroy you, because you have learned to anchor yourself not in the shifting opinions of others, but in the steady truth of your own worth. Think about this. Some of the strongest people you know didn't become strong in easy times. They became strong when they were left behind, when they were overlooked, when they were ignored. They built their strength in the silence of rejection. They discovered courage when no one was cheering for them. And in that same way, every time someone ignores you, you are being given an opportunity, not just to feel pain, but to grow stronger. The hurt of silence can become the very soil in which resilience grows. It's natural to want attention. It's natural to want love and recognition. But when those things are withheld, you must learn to become your own source of validation. You must learn to tell yourself, I am enough, even if they don't say it. And as you do that, the grip of their silence weakens. It no longer holds power over you because you have tapped into something greater than their approval. You have tapped into your own strength. So, when someone ignores you, let it teach you something about yourself. Let it show you that your spirit is tougher than you thought, that your heart is stronger than it feels, and that your worth is unshaken by the absence of their attention. Because at the end of the day, their silence is not just a wound. It is also a mirror, reflecting back to you the strength that has been inside you all along. Being ignored is never easy. It stirs up questions in your heart, doubts in your mind, and pain in your soul. But in that quiet ache, there is also an invitation. It is an invitation to pause, to look inward, and to ask yourself some honest questions. When someone ignores you, it doesn't just reveal who they are. It also gives you a chance to reflect on who you are and on the choices you've been making with your time, your love, and your energy. So often we give pieces of ourselves away without even realizing it. We pour our attention into people who give nothing back. We chase after approval from those who have no desire to offer it. We stretch ourselves thin to prove our loyalty while the other person doesn't even notice. And when they ignore us, it feels like betrayal. But if we step back and look at it with honesty, sometimes the real betrayal is not theirs, it's ours. Because in our desperation for their attention, we have betrayed ourselves. We have ignored our own worth. We have overlooked our own needs. Silence has a way of making us think. When someone does not respond, when they withhold their presence, when they leave us waiting, we are left alone with our thoughts. That loneliness becomes a mirror. It forces us to ask, why am I waiting for someone who is not waiting for me? Why am I begging for love where it is not freely given? Why am I ignoring my own heart in order to win theirs? Those questions are not comfortable, but they are necessary. They reveal to us the patterns we fall into, the habits we develop, the ways we undervalue ourselves without even realizing it. Maybe you've been pouring into a relationship that only drains you. Maybe you've been calling, texting, hoping, waiting for a response that never comes. Maybe you've been silencing your own needs just to keep the peace, thinking that if you give enough, eventually they will notice you. But here is the truth. Love that has to be begged for is not love at all. Attention that has to be forced is not worth having. Respect that must be demanded is not real respect. And being ignored is sometimes the painful reminder that you have been giving too much of yourself to people who never deserved it in the first place. Self-reflection means looking at your own patterns and asking yourself whether you've been treating yourself the way you expect others to treat you. If you have been ignoring your own needs, if you have been silencing your own voice, if you have been undervaluing your own worth, then it should not surprise you when others do the same. People often treat us in the way we show them we are willing to be treated. If you continually accept being ignored, then you are silently teaching others that it is okay to disregard you. But when you begin to value yourself, when you begin to honor your own heart, when you begin to say, I deserve better than this, you send a different message. You begin to teach others that silence is not acceptable, that neglect is not love, that ignoring you will not keep you. That is why being ignored can be such a powerful teacher. It forces you to stop and examine not just their actions, but your own. It pushes you to ask, am I honoring myself in this situation? Am I giving more than I am receiving? Am I chasing attention while neglecting my own peace? Those are hard questions, but they are questions that lead to freedom. Because once you see the truth, you can no longer live in denial. Once you recognize the imbalance, you can no longer justify it. And that is where change begins. Change begins when you stop asking why they ignored you and start asking why you accepted it. Change begins when you stop focusing on their silence and start paying attention to your own voice. Change begins when you realize that you do not need to prove your worth to anyone. It has always been there. Being ignored may break your heart for a moment, but it can also awaken your spirit for a lifetime. It can show you the importance of honoring yourself, of valuing your time, of protecting your heart, of walking away from places where you are not respected. So, when someone ignores you, let it become a mirror. Let it reflect back the truth you've been avoiding. Let it force you to examine your choices, your patterns, your boundaries. Because their silence is not just about them. It is also about you. It is about whether you are willing to keep giving yourself away to people who don't care, or whether you are ready to rise up and say, I deserve better. And when you make that decision, their silence no longer controls you because you have finally learned to listen to yourself. There comes a point when silence is no longer confusing, no longer something to analyze, no longer a puzzle to solve. There comes a moment when you realize that being ignored is not temporary. It is not an accident. It is not a misunderstanding. It is a clear sign. And that sign is telling you one simple truth: it is time to move on. We waste so much of our lives waiting for people who have already left us in their hearts. We hold on to conversations that never come, to promises that were never real, to hopes that are never fulfilled. We reread old messages, replay old memories, and convince ourselves that one day things will return to how they used to be. But while we wait, life keeps moving, and we remain stuck in a silence that was never meant to be filled. When someone ignores you, it may feel like cruelty, but it is often clarity. Their silence is not just the absence of words. It is their way of saying, without saying, that they are done. And as painful as that is, it is also your chance to be free. Moving on does not mean that what you felt wasn't real. It doesn't mean the love you gave wasn't genuine, or the time you invested wasn't meaningful. It simply means that their role in your story has ended, and holding on to them will only keep you from discovering the chapters still waiting to be written. Every silence that breaks your heart is also a doorway to a new beginning. The question is whether you will keep standing outside the closed door, or whether you will turn and walk toward the one that is open. It takes courage to move on, because letting go feels like loss. We grieve not just the person, but the future we imagined with them, the plans we built around them, the hope we tied to them. That grief is real, and it is heavy. But staying in a place where you are ignored is heavier still. It weighs down your spirit, it crushes your confidence, it drains your joy. And the longer you stay, the more you lose yourself. That is why silence must be seen as a sign, not as something to fight against. When someone shows you they do not value your presence, the most powerful thing you can do is value yourself enough to walk away. You see, moving on is not just about leaving them behind. It is about choosing yourself. It is about deciding that your worth will not be determined by someone else's silence. It is about recognizing that love should not feel like begging, that respect should not feel like chasing, that attention should not feel like a reward. You deserve people who don't make you question your value, people who don't make you wait in the dark, people who don't keep you guessing. And sometimes the only way to find them is to finally let go of the ones who cannot give you what you need. And yes, it hurts. It hurts to accept that the silence you hoped would end is here to stay. It hurts to admit that the one you gave your heart to has chosen not to respond. But in that hurt, there is also healing. Because every time you walk away from someone who ignores you, you are walking closer to someone who will cherish you. Every time you release what does not serve you, you are making space for what will. Every time you honor yourself enough to move on, you are proving that your dignity is stronger than your desperation. So let their silence be your answer. Don't rewrite it, don't excuse it, don't chase it. Accept it for what it is, a sign. And let that sign guide you toward freedom, toward peace, toward relationships that bring life instead of draining it. Their silence is not your defeat. It is your direction. And once you accept that, you will no longer see being ignored as the end of your story, but as the beginning of a new one.